there are some just key constants across Americans that want to work with other countries in the world, and that they want to be engaged in the world. There are demographic trends that would suggest that perhaps more democratic leaders would be favored if the current trends continue, just that people who are non-white and younger tend to be more liberal than older and white Americans. And the younger people tend, and Democrats too actually, are less concerned, or they emphasize less America's projection of its strength and influence in a military way around the world. So that includes defense spending. It also includes getting involved militarily in entanglements abroad. They support peacekeeping. And it doesn't mean they don't support coming to the aid of allies if they're threatened, but in general, they're especially younger Americans right now are less supportive of military interventions. Now, part of that could be just the life cycle they're in, because we do see a trend toward being more accepting of that as people age. But there is something, at least in the last surveys we did among the millennial generation, that they are a bit lower in terms of tolerating military interventions. So we'll see, but those would be the main things in terms of foreign policy. No, I don't think there are any great cracks in whether we should follow a multilateral type of approach compared to today.
I do think I agree with Dina, and anybody who hasn't checked out their study, the Chicago Council study on intergenerational differences, I highly commend it to them. It's a really wonderful and insightful study on the way in which, to the conversation earlier, the younger generation, which hasn't lived through, the Cold War success, let alone World War II and the Greatest Generation victories, is a lot less bullish about intervention. And one thing that we found from our study that kind of corresponds with this is that we proposed a scenario where humanitarian intervention or military intervention when in the case of human rights abuses. And we were surprised to know that the youngest generation, people 18 to 29, were most likely more likely than any other age group to effectively abstain from intervention in the case of human rights abuses. So, this is a generation that is seen as somehow sort of invincible, right? Young people we think of as invincible and empathetic toward foreign populations. And this is the group that effectively didn't want to, that wanted to focus on human rights problems at home, or such as mass incarceration and aggressive policing, rather than going abroad. It wanted to focus on other things. So, and the only group that wanted or that supported intervention over non-intervention was 60 years old and over. So I think we are seeing a way in which the younger generation is coming up with a different set of lived experiences than the older generation, and that's shaping their policy preferences. It's also happening in the economic sphere, right? They're not anticipating being economically better off than their parents. And so there's a lot of talk and scholarly discussion about how they're down on free market economics compared to other generations. So I think that there is a way in which experience informs preference, and we're seeing that in the foreign policy sphere, no doubt.